Hello everyone, and welcome to a new installment of Between the Lines. I'm Neila, bringing you the first Loreline's lyric analysis video. Hopefully, this will grow into a Between the Lines series, exploring the complex and reference-filled lyrics woven throughout Final Fantasy XIV. But maybe I'm putting the cart before the chocobo. For now, let's begin at the start, with answers. Right from the beginning, this piece does not pull its punches. The all-male chorus sings of weariness and suffering, though it is not immediately clear whose point of view this is meant to be. The final line, however, gives us a powerful clue, suggesting that this chorus represents the Ascians. The Ascians, I say, for why would sundered life be considered beyond redemption? Mortals live a bare handful of years before dying and being cleansed in the livestream for rebirth. In this light, the previous lyrics make sense as well. The first line refers to the final days, the tragedy the ancients faced that prompted them to summon Zodiark. The second line refers to the weight of all the souls of those lost, sacrificed to Zodiark. Their wish was to see their world preserved, and they gave their lives for this. Yet, as the third line indicates, the Ascians have been fighting for this wish for eons, rejoining the world so it might regain its original form. And of course, if theories of the Unsundered being freed of their tempering by the Warrior of Light's actions come true, that final line could come straight from their mouths as they see sundered life as truly alive for the first time, wondering how they could ever make up for what they have done. Or, if the Rose of Redemption mentioned in Fiend is indeed Azim, perhaps it is Azim who is redemption, and they believe their old colleague more lost than seems to be the case. The next stanza is a solo female voice, the perspective of Hydaelyn. She sings to her children, sundered life, offering guidance for their short and fleeting lives, and explaining that their mortal forms are the cause for this brevity. And so, they must mark the path for others born after to follow, a theme that recurs over and over again throughout the story. The land's light of justice seems a pretty straightforward metaphor for Hydaelyn's champions, most especially the Warrior of Light. The well of purpose mentioned in the next line is less clear, but it certainly could be a reference to the livestream. Hydaelyn does appear to be immersed in it when we see her. If not that, it might be her primal directive as given by her summoners, whatever precisely that ends up being. Walk free is an interesting phrase, and most certainly an important one, since it's repeated 3 times. But who is walking free? Sundered life? Under what little protection she can give from the rejoinings? The Ascians themselves? Released from the tyranny of tempering by the Warrior of Light? In a similar way, it is hard to say who is being told to believe, or what precisely they should believe. However, given the revelation that Hydaelyn is a primal, belief in the land can only benefit her. After all, Garuda shows us that belief is a highly effective way to empower a primal. The next stanza features a full chorus, with Hydaelyn answering to each word they speak. In total, there are 23 calls and responses, which could simply be intended to fit the 24-measure structure, or perhaps could be a reference to the 23 pairs of chromosomes that humans have. The words spoken by the chorus are all unique, but the response words follow a pattern of sorts, beginning with feel, think, teach, then going through hear, feel, think, her eternal call. The pattern is completed with another teach. Then words are repeated in pairs, speak, tell, hope, wish. It ends with for each of roam and sleep. The way the responses change less and less as it progresses seems to speak of a cycle slowly winding down. The next stanza again features the female solo vocalist, but the point of view does not seem to be Hydaelyn's this time. The perspective is plural rather than singular, and the descriptions simply do not fit what the primal might have experienced. They would, however, fit with the ancients. The first line here calls back to the very first line of the piece, seeming to be a response to it. If this is indeed the ancients trying to call out to the Ascians, led astray as they are by tempering, it would make sense that they would not want lives sacrificed in their name, for what the Ascians would return would not likely be the kind gentleness we see in Amarat's recreation, but a people tainted and heartsick from their baptism of blood. As for lost in hope, other languages strongly indicate that the souls of the ancients who gave their lives to Zodiark to save their loved ones remain a part of him, the grand creation that was their last hope for salvation. And of course, returning to the first line of the stanza, their plight is indeed being repeated. With Endwalker, the final days are returning once more. The third line really makes it clear whose perspective this must be, for the ancients' souls were torn in the sundering, and rebirth often leads them to have a different form than they originally wore, as we learn in the Eden questline with Mitron. It could also be that these bodies forsaken refer instead to those who offered up their lives in sacrifice. What's more, this line shows us that the story writers clearly had the world's background and the story's general direction planned quite early, which is actually a fairly common and highly effective story creation strategy, so it should not be too surprising. And of course, the last line strengthens the Garden of Eden analogies with Amarot, in which Zodiark fills the role of the serpent, since his summoning began a cycle of suffering that has perpetuated ever since. And it is fitting, since he is associated with the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. And the ancients never had their tomorrow and tomorrow. Their future was taken from them, first by catastrophe, then by tempering, and finally by the sundering. The next stanza still features the female soloist, with occasional answers from the chorus, but the plural pronouns again suggest this is still not Hydaelyn's perspective. It may be that this is still the perspective of the ancients, who we are indicated had a dim view of violence, preferring debate and discourse to solve issues. Or perhaps this is the Ascians' view of mortals, so violent and cruel by comparison to the nearly strifeless existence in Amarot. Certainly we know Emet Selch has repeatedly tested humanity and ever been disappointed by the results. The second line is much less clear. While it could refer to the ancient mode of speech, what we see in A Realm Reborn seems more like dragon speech, where there are distinct phonemes. The so-called Ween Woon speech of the ancients in 5.0 seems a much newer phenomenon. However, it could be intended to refer to how the Ascians cannot see new life as truly alive because of their tempering. Or, since the next line refers to Hydaelyn, the land, it could refer to her eternal call of hear, feel, think, which is heard by the soul rather than the ears. Certainly, the revelation that she is mired in doubt is an interesting one. Is this because she struggles to fulfill her primal directive, suggested by Vena to be shackling the darkness? All indications are that she is slowly but surely losing that battle, one rejoining at a time. It is most likely these failures, these calamities that she mourns, or perhaps the unnaturally short lifespans of the sundered. The line about judgment is most likely not from her perspective though, but rather her judgment upon the ancients, the sundering. And the final line seems to be spoken by the ancients, dying to a phenomenon they do not understand, though it could also refer to sundered life. In truth, it is most likely intended to be both, to tie these two together and draw parallels between their situations. The next stanza again has a call-and-response format, but this time it is Hydaelyn who speaks first, answered by the chorus. Counting the thrice-repeated answers only once, there are 13 words Hydaelyn speaks here, perhaps a hint toward the 13 Ascians who remained on the convocation and were tempered by Zodiark. As for the answers, the first 7 precisely match the first 7 responses in the earlier stanza. These are followed by 4 blinks, and then hear, look, think, one word away from her usual hear, feel, think. The final answer together is interesting as well. Could it refer to the planned conclusion of the Hydaelyn and Zodiark story arc? It certainly seems likely that we will get answers from both of them ere the end. The final stanza again speaks of the brevity of life, coming once more from Hydaelyn's perspective. In a way, she is telling them why, given life, they are meant to die. She assures them that they are not truly meant to understand, that their deaths are needed for life to continue to grow. In many ways, this mirrors numerous biblical passages about the brevity of life, and something tells me this is no coincidence. The final line also opens up a mystery. Know what? If this entire piece is directed at the Warrior of Light, it would make sense that they must learn the truth of the world, the history that has been lost and forgotten in the Sundering, as we did in Shadowbringers. Of course, there are more revelations to be made in Endwalker. As the 2021 New Year's poem says, we may soon learn why some dig for truths below. Until such time, though, we can only look back at old revelations with new eyes. I, for one, found rather more than I expected to in a piece of music released in 1.0. I hope it was as interesting and informative for you. And as thanks for hanging around to the end, let me treat you to my own twist on the piece. This is Neila Naruto, signing off. To all of my children who would like this video, to all of my children subscribe and let the bell toll. The science for comments, let us know where your thoughts stand. Pray be those who walk before and share this with your friends.